Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Policing in America podcast with Sergeant Tom. I'm joined today by Rashmi Airan. She's a keynote speaker, a leadership consultant, and a former attorney whose story is one of hard lessons, resilience, and redemption. Rashmi's journey takes her from practicing law to pleading guilty in a federal fraud case. She served time in prison, and ultimately that experience helped her build a platform that now helps leaders strengthen their ethical compass. She is the creator of the RISE process, which you'll hear all about in the podcast. She works with organizations all across the country, and I'm truly honored to have her on the podcast. So, without any further delay, I give you Rashmi Airan. So, Rashmi, I'd love for you to start just by introducing yourself to the listeners. Tell your story and the trajectory of sort of what happened to you and where you are now.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, and hello to your whole audience. I would say that my parents immigrated from India in 1970. My dad actually was here for a few years prior to that for college for a master's program. Went back, married my mom. Yes, it was an arranged marriage. There's a whole story behind that we could unpack. They are happily married 54 years later, or 55 years later now. Pretty amazing. But anyway, I'm born pretty quickly. And I'm essentially raised in this family where it was all around legacy and courage and justice. And the history of my family is that my grandfather in India was a freedom fighter against the British during the revolution. And he fought alongside Gandhi. He was in jail alongside Gandhi. So like I come from this legacy of fighters and survivors and people that do it even when it's hard. So as a kid growing up, I almost basically, it was not like somebody told me to be this way, but it was like a self-imposed duty I put upon myself to basically be the perfect little Indian girl, right? And along the way, I had watched my parents struggle through this very hard moment in their lives and when I was a senior in high school. And I just developed this mindset that if I just do all the right things and
Mhm.
get the grades and work at the big jobs and make money and win all the awards and I just follow my plan, I don't have to go through the struggle that I've just experienced and watched my parents have to go through. And so I just had this like idea, and obviously it was a fallacy because we'll unpack that in a bit. But
Mhm.
by all accounts, was on that trajectory. I went to UNC undergrad,
Mhm.
did really well. I got inducted into the honorary societies and won all the awards and was very active on campus. From there, I moved to New York, and I was a investment banker on Wall Street at Morgan Stanley. I did that for 2 years, and then I went to Columbia Law School, stayed in New York, and continued in my legal education. I did really well at Columbia. Again, graduated top of my class. And then when I graduated, I ended up actually moving to San Francisco for a job. So I worked at a big law firm in San Francisco. It was a beautiful building. I remember on Sansom Street in the Federal
Mhm.
Reserve Building. I was doing litigation work, and then I quickly realized that it was too far from home because my family lives here in Miami. At the time, my sister, who's a year younger than me, she was suffering very significantly from some mental health issues. So I decided to come home to be near my family and help my parents out and just be a son's, be the big sister and be around. And so I moved home. I worked at some big law firms. Eventually, I opened my own real estate law practice as a title attorney in 2004. Like 10 months later, my son was born.
Mhm.
And then a year later, my daughter was born. I married a firefighter. And so I was the major breadwinner. There was a lot of pressure and stress just raising young kids and being in a young new marriage, and then also just trying to make ends meet, right? Like the financial challenges of running my own law firm
Mhm.
and being a mother. And so, all of that came to a head around 2007, right before the crash. So, like, if you take yourselves back to before 2009, when the market collapsed, real
Mhm.
estate was booming, right? And I live in
Yeah.
Miami, so the market was insane. And I one day get this opportunity to meet a real estate developer. And what was going on in my mind was like, oh my God, if I can get this one big client, that's the answer to all my problems, right? Like,
Mm,
again, remember, I was always
yeah.
trying to avoid the struggle. So I thought, well, if I can just get the client, then I can save my marriage because I had started having marital problems. The kids started asking me, Mommy, when are you going to come home for dinner? Will you be home for dinner? I was just constantly hustling and rushing and always moving and trying to get to the next thing and make the money and blah, 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 achieve the goals that I absolutely defined myself by, right? So, like,
Hmm.
all of my self-worth, esteem, love, everything was rooted in what I'd always done, which was be the superstar achiever. So
Yeah.
I basically start working with this client without asking any of the questions. And I remember when I first went in to go meet him, it was in an office in Miami Beach, and he was essentially giving buyers incentives to buy condo units, which I knew that other developers were doing at the time because I had done some closings for buyers. And I just assumed like, oh, well, if everybody else is doing it, it must be okay. And even though my gut was screaming and something
Mm.
didn't feel right, I just found it so easy to silence that and had convinced myself that I needed the client.
Hmm.
And I started working with him. And so within 2 weeks, I had my first closing request. And I just never took the time or made the time to do any due diligence, to ask the questions, to listen to my gut, to ask for help, to ask for a second opinion, right? I just didn't do any of that. And I did about 200 closings for him in 15 months, and then all the units sold, and I stopped working with him. So now it's 2009. The market collapses, and I merge my practice with my father's, who's also a practicing attorney, but he's a litigator. So then we build our litigation practice, and I grew our practice by 1,200%. And
Oh my God.
now we're representing in litigation. I'm representing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and NationStar and like all the big banks doing litigation work for them, essentially foreclosure litigation. And 2 more years go by, and the FBI knocks on my door. And so two FBI agents show up, and I didn't know that I could say to them, "Hey, can I take a card and call you back when I have like an attorney with me?"
Right.
And they're definitely banking on that. Like you definitely know better, right? Like you're in law
Yeah.
enforcement, but I didn't know. I didn't know I could say to them, "Hey, can I take your card and I'll call you back and I'll come in and talk to you with an attorney." So instead, I let them into my office, and for 4 hours, they grilled me and showed me pictures and documents and emails. And I'm like answering these questions super naively, yes, no, without actually remembering if I had actually ever met the person or ever seen
Oh,
the
wow.
email. I didn't understand the reach of it.
Compliant.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just
Were
didn't. And
they were they being nice to you, or were they
yeah,
being
yeah.
authoritarian? Oh,
No,
they
no,
were.
they were nice. They were just being, inquisitive and curious.
Yeah.
In that, this is 2013, no, 2011. And at the time, I really had convinced myself I hadn't done anything wrong. Like my
Mm-hmm.
files already passed audit. It's 4 years later. Like there was no reason for me to believe or think that I had anything to hide or think like my files were clean.
Sure.
My escrows were clean, like all of that. And so they after 4 hours they left, and then 2 more years go by. So now it's 2013, and I get a grand jury subpoena for documents. Now, I still have the mindset like I haven't done anything wrong. So I submit all
Yeah.
my documents. And then within 3 months, my attorney, who's the former US attorney for Florida, for Southern District of Florida, and he's like a father figure to me. He's been a mentor for many, many years. And I had asked him to help me in this, not thinking there was going to be much, right? And so he
Mm-hmm.
calls me into his office and he says, "You're a target." And
Mm.
I didn't know what that meant. I'm not a criminal attorney. Like I tell people like I'm a dirt lawyer. I'm a real estate lawyer. I have no idea what that meant. And
Yeah.
then when he explained it to me, it felt like my world ended. It felt like I felt like the rug was being pulled out from underneath me, and every single thing I had done my whole life to get to where I was at, like all the hard work in college and law school, and like it was just gone. That's what it felt like. It
Mm-hmm.
just felt like a total like loss of everything. I
Mm.
had no idea how I was going to move forward. Eventually, I got indicted for one count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 24 counts of bank fraud. So they took 24 of those 200 transactions, they attached it to the complaint, and I still was going to fight it and go to trial. And then
Uh-huh.
eventually, my attorney, My trial attorney was a friend named David, and he basically said he after like we went through discovery, he one day just called me into his office with my parents, and we walked in thinking we were going to talk about the trial, which was set for 3 months later. And
Yeah.
instead, he basically gave us this entire like presentation. He was like, "Look, Rashmi, if you go to trial, you're going to lose."
Wow.
And there's like no appeal. And here's the thing, like you knew enough. And
Yeah.
when you're in a trial and when you're charged with conspiracy, all they have to prove is that you knew one thing. There could be 500 million other pieces of evidence and facts that you don't know. But if you know this one thing, that's enough. And
Wow.
so, first of all, you did know that there was this buyer incentive. And the fact that you didn't know all this other stuff, it doesn't matter. As an attorney, you have a fiduciary duty to do more. You have a fiduciary, as a leader, you should have either walked away or at least tried to stop them. And you didn't do that. And so he
Can
said,
I ask you, like, did are you speechless? Like when you hear, you're thinking of a strategy of defense,
"Oh,
and
I
now
mean,
you're
there were
being told
tears."
surrender is your only option, really.
Yeah, no,
Is that what he was saying?
yeah. He said, "Look, if I were you, I would plead guilty
Oh,
and own. You're gonna have to look that dragon in the eye and just. I know you didn't walk into this planning a crime, but you knew enough and
what
not
was the incentive for him to tell you to plead as opposed to like, listen, we're going to fight this? Like, why did
because
he
he's
hedge?
like, because he was like, you're gonna. He said, I'm telling you right now, if you go to trial, you're gonna lose. There's enough evidence. Your name is on every single piece of document. There is no way a jury is going to say that you didn't know at least one piece of evidence, and that's all they have to prove. They just need to be able to
Mm,
prove. Yeah, and then there was this one piece of evidence that I like on Christmas Eve at 8 o'clock that I forwarded. It's an email, and I never opened the attachment, and that email was very damning. And he was
oh,
like, all they have to do is even just show this one piece of evidence. It's enough. It's enough. It
oh,
shows that you got something, you forwarded it, you had intention, and it doesn't matter that you didn't read it. It doesn't matter,
yeah,
right? Like how easy is it for us to forward emails on Christmas Eve without actually paying attention? And so,
100%.
yeah, I made a really hard decision. He said, you're going to be a convicted felon for the rest of your life. You're going to have come to terms with that. I remember like in that meeting, my dad walked out 6 times to cry, and
Oh,
my mom's hard as nails. She doesn't cry. And he was crying. I mean, we've been friends 20 years. It was very emotional. And, but once I decided to plea, it took months for me to forgive myself and to take full ownership and to really understand that not doing something is still doing something wrong.
mm,
And so once I got that and like really prayed on it, forgave myself, came to terms with the fact that I'm a really good person, but I made some really bad decisions, which by the way, we all do.
yeah.
Um, Once I pled, I then told my son because I didn't want him to like randomly Google my name, which is the kid he is. And that was a very hard decision because like, aren't we the hero of our kids' eyes? And then I called. So I'm a leader in our community. I sit on a lot of boards. I'm very active in my community. I'm very politically involved. And so like I didn't want anybody to read about it. I didn't know if there'd be a press release. So I called almost 200 people and told them. And like
Wow.
friends from elementary school and college and law school, but also like my friends in the community and my kids' friends' parents and my politicians in Miami and managing directors of law firms. And like I literally one by one picked up the phone and called and told them. And the most incredible thing happened, which is I had convinced myself my whole life that people love me because I'm this superstar and I'm an achiever and I'm really smart. But the judge got 182 letters of support
Mm,
sharing stories about my character and my history and people loving me unconditionally. And I learned that people are very forgiving of our humanity when we give them a chance. And that we are just all flawed humans living in this existence called humanity, life, and that none of us are immune to doing some wrong things. And how do we rise through those moments? Like what make like these moments, I believe, are tests for us to become stronger and better versions of ourselves. And so the judge got all these letters. I got sentenced at my sentencing, which was a few months later. All those people showed up for me. Like some drove down from out of town, like North Carolina and Virginia, or flew in from Houston or North New York, and like not even telling me. They just came to be with me and
Mm.
support me and show the judge they loved me. And so then I got sentenced to a year and a day, which felt like my life was over. And like I always tell people, it's not that I was scared for me, because I'm a pretty strong person and I'm a fighter and I'm a survivor, but I was scared for my kids, right? At the time, they were 9 and 10. And I didn't know what would happen to them. I was so worried about them. But I made a very important decision, which was I told them the truth. And I didn't want them to, I wanted them to have the ability to ask me questions. I wanted them to be able to come to visit me. And I just, from a spiritual perspective, believe that they are also going to learn a lot through this experience. And I don't know what that is yet, but they will get stronger. And as hard as it's going to be, we will be in it together. So I told them, they asked me lots of questions over the next 60 days before I had to surrender. And so
Mm.
when I was in, I would call them every day. I would email them every day. They came to visit me regularly. And that was very transformative for my children. And now they're almost 20 and 21,
Mm.
and they're, I think all of our kids are very resilient. I mean, they've gone through a lot, and I'm also not divorced. And that
Mm.
sister passed away 6 years ago, the one that suffered from mental health. So,
Mm.
I mean, we don't just stop struggling. We are constantly fighting and like dealing with something in our lives. It's just some of us, every day we're dealing with something different, and all of us define struggle differently because it hits us differently every single day. But what they know and they've watched me do is that no matter what the struggle is or the fear or the uncertainty, they have watched me come through it stronger. And I know that they
Mm.
will rise through this stronger. So like now all my work, I got out of prison in 2016. And so all of my work has been around how can I inspire others and influence others to, whether it's to learn from my story, to see themselves in my story, to understand that no matter what we're going through, we can get through it. We can through it. And so that's what I do now.
So you said the key word that I've been looking at with some of your work. You can rise through it,
Yep,
not
that's
rise
my battle
above it,
cry.
right? It's very specific. You're not going to rise above. You're going to rise through.
No, because
What
here's
is? Go
yeah,
ahead.
here's the thing. The world tells us rise above. And I feel like when you rise above, it's like pushing you to it's trying to get you to push harder, which is just an escape. It's like when you just say move on, it's like you're not actually dealing with whatever the struggle or the pain is that you're going through. And unless we
Hmm.
actually deal with what we're going through and like feel that pain in our bones till it hurts, and then like look at yourself in the mirror and say I forgive you, and have those really hard conversations with yourself and the people who love you and the people around you. And yeah, you're going to probably lose stuff. Like I lost my bar license, I lost all my money, I lost my freedom, I lost a lot. But
Wow.
I am happier today than I ever thought I could be. I'm a much better human being today. I'm a much better mother. So I believe there's
Mm.
always a reason. And oftentimes when we're going through and we feel like we're down on our knees, it's so hard to see the light on the other side of this because we feel like we're completely blocked. But if you just push harder and rise above, you're never going to actually get to that light that waits waiting for you on the other side. And so what I tell people is like there's magic on the other side of this pain, but you got to get
Mm.
through it. You got to go through it and rise through it in order to find that light and magic on the other side of it. And that's how we go through our hard moments. In fact, that's how we create our legacy. Like
Hmm.
our legacy is not how much money we made and what car we drove or what company we started. Our legacy is if I started a company, what impact in a positive way did I make on others because of what I created? Or
Hmm.
as human beings, our legacy is how do we rise to these moments and grow and become better versions? Like that's what people remember us for. That's our legacy. What are we here
Hmm.
for?
Yeah, that's incredible. What does RISE stand for you? I know I
Yeah,
believe it's
I
an
have a
acronym that
framework.
you
Thanks
have.
for asking. So
Yeah.
the RISE framework is reframe, identify, surrender, and then evolve. And so that is, I believe, the process in which how we go through it. So reframe is whenever we're going through like that negative moment or the struggle or the uncertainty, and again, it's defined differently for all of us. It could be legal, medical, marital, financial, mental health, or it looks like fear, disruption, anxiety, AI anxiety, maybe,
Mm.
uncertainty. Like some people are getting laid off. Like there's so many things right now we're all facing. So when we're going through those moments, if we can reframe that negative into a positive, and you can't necessarily define what that positive is yet, but the mindset is I'm going to accept what it is. I'm going to acknowledge the pain of it. embrace the feelings that I'm feeling, and be able to root in the idea that I can reframe this into a positive. I just can't see what that positive is yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then once you reframe, you identify. And I believe we're all kind of trapped in these self-imposed prisons of our own mind, right? It's a metaphor, obviously, that I can use because I've physically had to surrender to actual prison, but I've also recognized that I was trapped in my own mental prison. And I believe that we are all, whether it's limiting beliefs, assumptions that we have made, our cultural norms, our orthodoxies, the stories we tell ourselves around perfectionism
Mm-hmm.
and ego and all the things, we literally get trapped in these glass walls and we're like imprisoned in our own minds. And so once we can identify what those are and begin to sort of like recognize what they are, and then identify the people around us that are going to support us, because friends are great, but friends that are only the yes people in our lives and never challenge us are
Mm-hmm.
not, we need to be able to surround ourselves with more than that, right? So I call my constellation of stars the people in my life that'll hold up a mirror and show me the truth about myself that I need to know, that I need to see about myself, even when it hurts. Because those are the people that challenge us. When the pain is hard, we need to be able to see the hard things about ourselves. So that's
Mm-hmm.
identify. Surrender is okay. So now you've reframed, you've identified. Now the surrender part is where you start to break down the glass walls. You let go of your ego, you let go of fear, you let go of control. And like I always joke, I'm like, if you ask my ex-husband, he'll tell you I am a control freak. This was not easy for me. And I went through this phase of my life where I had zero control over my life. I had to surrender. I didn't know
Yeah.
what I was going to eat, where I was going to sleep, who I was going to be around, what I was going to be doing. I had zero control. And so when you actually go through this full like surrender of control, you learn that it's okay. Like I'm still around. I have survived. So it doesn't mean that we stop wanting the outcome to be a certain way, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
still have the goals, we still have the desires, we still have, what we hope will happen, and you do the best you can. But you let go of the control and the worry that you have around the outcome, and judgment. So judgment is something that I think we all can find ourselves in, right? Like we judge ourselves first and foremost. So we have to let go of that. But then we also judge others. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we will acknowledge that we find it very easy to pass judgment on others. And having gone
Mm-hmm.
through this experience and been around women I would have never met otherwise, I realized we are just drops from the same ocean, human
Mm-hmm.
beings living a shared existence. And but for the grace of God, there go I. And so when we
Mm-hmm.
can let go of judgment, right, this is how we start to break down the glass walls that we have put ourselves in. And finally, once you do all that, is you evolve. And evolve means there's so many ways we can evolve. And we employ different strategies to evolve. I think it can be anything from finding gratitude by writing in a gratitude journal, finding joy when we think, like I robbed myself of so much joy as a kid because I was always on the go, trying to be the achiever, trying to be the good girl, that I just forgot to have fun. I mean, it's not that I didn't have fun,
Mm-hmm.
but I did rob
Mm-hmm.
myself of a lot of fun. So, and by the way, I'm still working on it. Like my kids are like, "Mom, please start dating," like so it's a daily thing. I try to remind myself to be present. So just evolution means like being present in the moment. Be where your feet
Mm-hmm.
are and just
Be where
understand
your
that we're
feet are.
all like the moment counts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of ways we evolve. There's the three that I really I root in a lot, but there's so many other strategies and ways that when I work with clients, we go through.
So I'm there's so many things, but I'm going to ask you this. What's a way I could explain to the police officers when they deal with the criminals and they sort of just look at them as, oh, you're a felon, you're a bad guy, you're a suspect, whatever it is. And they sort of dehumanize them by using those terms,
Oh,
suspect
I
and
remember
whatnot.
the dehumanization process. I remember
Do
how the
you?
US Marshals face. Oh yeah, the U.S.
Can you
Marshals treated
please
me.
talk about
Yes.
that?
Okay, so when I surrendered, I became 05121-104. That was my inmate
Wow.
number.
Still remember it.
Oh, of course, I'll never forget it. And you're not referred to by your name. I mean, sometimes I would be inmate Aaron Pace, which was my married name, but usually in any sort of documents or anything, I was always 05121-104. And there was this moment where I had to get transported. Well, I got transported twice. So I was in three separate facilities. And in the transport process, you're sitting on a bus or a van in handcuffs and shackles and a waist chain and prison clothes with prison shoes and you're sitting in an armored van and I remember there was this one time we stopped and we were waiting for a flight to come in. They were transporting us to a different facility. We had to wait for a plane to come in, literally Con Air.
Oh
And
my gosh.
some of us had to go to use the restroom. It had been hours. Like they picked us up at 7. Now it's 1 in the afternoon. And like we're like, okay, we really need to use the restroom. And I remember that how dehumanizing this process was because we're literally in the middle of a random airfield, handcuffs and shackles with a waist chain. And so 5 of us women were like, okay, we really need to use the restroom. So they finally agree after an hour of us asking, and they drive us like 100 feet over to a hangar. And they go in, they make sure nobody's in the hangar, they, clear the bathroom. We all had I remember I had like a blue jumpsuit on. And so I remember like asking, like, okay, so the guard walks me over in shackles still, but like I hobble over to the bathroom. It's in the middle of a random hangar in the middle of nowhere outside of Tampa. And he opens the bathroom door and like just had me go in. He was waiting right outside. And I was like, I can't, I have handcuffs on. Like, I can't even like open my jumpsuit. Is there any way you can like uncuff me? And he said no. And I found that to be, I
Hmm.
understand. Like, I understand there are some really dangerous people, and I guess something could happen. But I was like, you were literally right outside the bathroom. So there was just
Hmm.
an example of like understanding the like the the need for a little bit of empathy in that moment. And I'm sure there's rules, and I'm sure they have like, rules and regs that they have to abide by and like all this stuff.
Hmm.
But in the moment,
Hmm.
they had total power. So that's just like one example. But there were a lot of examples of guards walking through the housing units and like randomly trying to have this power trip over us, So there was like always things. And I think that police officers are not marshals, right? Because these are like potential felons or potential
Hmm.
convicts. But I think that there's a fine line in enforcing the law and also trying to have some empathy for the human that's on the other side of whatever it is that you're doing. I don't know what the advice would be, except maybe to just constantly remind yourself of our shared humanity. And like I said, but for the
Yeah.
grace of God, there go I.
Yeah, it's I try to explain this to people when, they'll use terms like Adam Henry, which just means asshole, gangster or something. And
Oh, that's
it's
interesting.
just because you completely you forget that this is someone's kid. This is someone. And whenever I was a
This is
training
somebody's
officer,
parent. Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes I would open the back as we were, and I would show this to my trainee, and I would just start talking to this person. And you
Yeah.
ask them, how old were you and you got jumped into the gang? And you hear 8, 7, 11. And I think, when I
Because
would talk to them and say, right, just imagine.
because they didn't have any other option. There's so many people that fall into something because there is no other, or the way they see it is there's no other option, or they get pulled
Sure.
into it before they could even find or have the mental capacity to even find another option. Know that there's another option.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm not saying
And
that there's
that's,
not bad people or there's not people that have done
of
really bad
course,
things. There are,
sure,
for
sure.
sure. And,
Yeah.
but, you
But
know,
just think, yeah, thinking about that, like you're on the other side, you're in shackles. What was so did you plead guilty to conspiracy or what
yeah,
was
I
it?
pled guilty to one count of general conspiracy. Ultimately, that was the plea deal. And so that carried with it a 5-year max. And then I got sentenced to a year out of that.
So there's no way a Columbia trained lawyer says, there's probably gonna be a road that I take where maybe I commit fraud. Like that's never gonna even enter your mind. How
I'm literally the
how on
last
your
person anybody would think to have gone to prison.
yeah.
For
Right.
real.
So what did it look like? Was it really that idea of the slippery slope? Was it just one little thing and incremental, like
Yeah,
evolutionary?
it was like the the idea of the financial stability and the how that I thought would solve the problem of what I was feeling at home and not have to like run around and hustle
Mm,
all the time. Like the
hmm.
allure of
Hmm.
that, right? Like it just trapped me, and I made a ton of assumptions and justifications, and I rationalized that it must be okay.
Yeah.
And even when my gut felt really icky, I thought it's just this one
Yeah.
time. or no,
Yeah.
everybody else is doing it, it should be fine. And that is the
Right.
slippery slope. And it is in the moment, it's very easy to convince ourselves. What I tell people is
100%.
like, there is I believe a decision-making process that we can engage in that would help us from falling on the wrong side of that slope. And so
Okay.
it's not rocket science. It's you pause. So actually take time to step off the race course of life and actually pause for a moment. And then once you pause, right? Then you listen to your inner voice because the thing is I silenced my inner voice because I was always on the go. I was always on this rat race. I was always running around the race course. And so it's like if you don't pause, you can't actually listen to what your moral
Mhm.
compass is telling you, right? So you listen, you
Yeah.
pause, you listen to your inner voice, then you reflect. Like you actually have to spend time reflecting. If I make this decision, am I going to fall on the right side of the line or the wrong side of the line? Because there is a line.
Hmm.
And there's
Hmm.
also a gray area on either side of the line. Okay. So if you're on the right side of the line and you're in the gray area, well, that's like called strategy, thinking outside the box,
Hmm.
profitability, that's disruption. Like that's where all that happens. Okay. Some of the best inventions and ideas have happened in the right side of the line in the gray area. But when you're on the
Hmm.
wrong side of the line in the gray area, that's the slippery slope. And that's where you make one decision and you start falling down and you cannot come back up. So then once you have reflected and you've thought about like, okay, now I know where I fall on this line and I'm going to make sure I fall on the right side of the line, then you make the decision, right? And I'm not saying it takes
Hmm.
hours. It's just you have to actually take the time to make the decision. And we're making thousands of decisions a day. So it becomes second nature eventually. But the kicker is you make the decision no matter the consequences. So
Hmm.
oftentimes what happens is loss aversion is a real thing, right? So like none of us want to
Hmm.
lose money, lose a friend, lose a client, lose anything, lose a promotion, right? But there will come a time for all of us when making the right decision means we're going to lose something. And we got to make
Hmm.
the right decision anyways. And in my case, I didn't want to lose a client. And so I didn't make the right decision, right? And that has led me down this 10-year journey of prison. And, it's interesting because, like I said, I'm happier now than I ever thought I could be. And I really feel like this is my purpose in life. And I do believe spiritually, this is why I end up going through all of this to help others now. And if I could go back, I wish I would have made better decisions because I take responsibility of my role in the 2009 crisis. But I wouldn't take away the prison experience because
Hmm.
I learned so much about myself, about humanity, about people. Um, I have I have great stories that I share on stage and with my kids, and my book is coming out soon, so somewhere in there. But
Yeah.
but I think that the learning from me has been monumental, but I don't wish it on anybody else. So
So with that, I want to ask because I don't want to say it's easy. I don't want to belittle what you're saying, but of course it seems commonsensical. I'm going to pause. I'm going to listen. Stimulus, space, response kind of idea with
yeah.
with the Viktor Frankl idea. But you were such a high achiever, and your brain was operating on a certain level. Do you think? First off, I think you need to have deliberate practice to do this. Like this,
It
whether it's
has to be intentional.
meditation.
You have to have
Okay,
self-awareness. It has to be intentional. It's a conscious choice. Yes.
and this is something you're going to need to do before the event. So would you
Or at least
recommend
you've
some?
trained yourself and you've
How do
gone
you?
through enough um, self-imposed meditation and like
There you
practice
go. That's
on the
yeah.
small things like around your house or with your kids, right? Like where you engage in this.
Traffic.
So it becomes part of your core. So that
Yes.
when the crisis moment arrives, you
Yes.
are already trained. So the challenge for all of us is to start implementing the decision-making process, to start implementing how we see and view these choices in our lives as a regular, daily, every moment thing so
Mhm.
that when the moment comes when the shit's going to hit the fan, we make the right decision, right?
Yeah.
So I think you were going to ask me what happens for leaders that are constantly on the go, and like in my case, so I'll answer. I
Yeah.
think I think I know where you were going with this. In my case, I would say I was stuck in. Okay, I've done a lot of research around behavioral ethics and
Okay.
how and why we make decisions the way we make decisions. So like the first 7 years when I got out, this is what I was doing because I was like, what the heck happened? How did I go so off path? How did I make such
Yes.
wrong decisions? I was the good girl. What the frick happened? And so
Yes.
what I have learned and discovered, there are lots of behavioral psychology theories and ideas, but I will share a few that I have learned and
Please.
realized that I was stuck in. So one is the idea of overconfidence bias.
Uh-huh.
So overconfidence bias is the idea that I'm a good person, I want to do X, X must be good. So what
Right.
happens is I believe I'm a good mother, I'm a good sister, I'm a good daughter, I'm a good attorney, I'm involved in the community. Like I'm a good person, and if I have now made the decision to do X, X is obviously fine. It's good. So this is what happens. When you're stuck in overconfidence bias about yourself, you lack any sense of applying moral awareness or moral judgment to what you're about to
Hmm.
do, to any decision that you're about to do. It could be committing adultery. It could be even not even that extreme. Like maybe you're just talking to somebody, or maybe run a light. This is something that probably we've all done. Or maybe we're texting when we shouldn't be while we're driving.
Hmm.
Or
Sure.
maybe we scream at our kid when we know we shouldn't. Like there's so many ways this shows up. So
Hmm.
that's overconfidence bias. Now, the other concept is the idea of moral humility. So, moral humility, let's start with the idea of humility. Okay, we all understand humility, right? It's like in any moment, I am no better than anybody else. So it's the idea of like, don't be arrogant, don't think you're better than others, don't always know that you can continue to learn and grow. So that's it's not an official definition. I'm just giving you a quick definition.
Sure.
Moral humility is the idea that on any given day, I could maybe make a bad moral decision
Hmm.
given the stressors, influences, pressures, competition, life happening in that moment. So if we believe and have moral humility, then when we're in the moment of making decisions, we're able to check ourselves and apply moral judgment. And we break down that overconfidence bias. And we recognize like,
Hmm.
yeah, okay, I'm a good person, but I I could catch myself and make a bad decision. So let me apply this decision making process and be a little bit more in tune with what I'm about to do.
Hmm.
So those are like two of the I well, I talked about moral awareness and moral judgment, which are self-explanatory, but so these four concepts um helped me really understand what went wrong in my life, how
Hmm.
I caught myself in a place that I never believed I would catch myself. And I think so many people look at me and are like, "Pff, that could have been me." Like,
Hmm.
like I could totally see myself in your story because I have forwarded an email or I have, I've not opened an attachment or I've really wanted a client and I went and laid in bed with them and I mean figuratively, right? So
Right.
so it's the idea that any one of us on any given day, if we don't pay attention, could make a bad decision. And by the way, people do all day, every day. I just happen to be the one that went to prison. Like, well, one of the ones.
Sure. Sure.
So
It's this is what I find interesting is there's a theory out there, and the military's picking it up. It's called the leaky character reservoir. And what you find is people that attain a certain level of status, like just like you run out of patience, you could run out
yeah.
of character, and you have to replenish your. If we say, "I'm sorry, I lost my patience," everyone gives you grace, and you're fine.
Oh, that's
It's
interesting.
not
Losing
as
character.
right. And there is like your character just it's like a reservoir. And the day you take your wedding vows, right? Okay, you're probably not going to have any issues that night. You're
Yeah.
super strong. But
Yeah.
15 years later, right? It's the character just sort of gets worn down. And you have to fill this character reservoir. You have to do these things. And it's usually a combination of cognitive biases that come together because you are so successful. You are doing these things. I know you are big into the philanthropy of your community. So
Yeah.
you are in this moral sort of high ground. So how could you do anything wrong? Your brain
Right.
will
You
almost
just
trick
convince
you.
yourself. You convince yourself. And I will tell you the arrogance that I had, which was when I was going through this and I was trying to avoid getting indicted, I did have this arrogant side of me that was like, I know all the right people. Like, I'm not going to get indicted. which is so freaking arrogant and
Hmm.
completely wrong. And so, so it, I can't even believe I used to think that. It's just so crazy that
Yeah.
I believed that about myself in the situation. But yeah,
But it's all, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Finish your
it's okay.
thought.
It's okay. It's
I,
okay.
I just can't see how, what is the other outcome to not think that when you have accomplished all these things. Like
Yeah.
you have to have a constant dose of humility, a constant self-reflection. It has to be deliberate practice. And the phrase, I know with my people, I always got to say, where am I wrong? What am I not seeing? Like I have to make that a habit because you could be around
It's so
people that are like,
important, but that's a sign of a good leader. I would say most leaders don't think that way. Most
mm,
leaders are not authentic and accountable and vulnerable. They believe that they know it all. Now, I do believe the
mm,
tide is changing, but it's a slow burn. I think it's slow.
yeah.
There are a lot of leaders that would rather push and push instead of owning things and taking accountability or asking for help or, seeing if there's a different point of view, right?
So I have a question about that, and I think it's a great segue. Our politicians, our business leaders, nobody wants to admit they did anything wrong. Nobody wants to admit that they don't know something. We even call politicians who change their mind, we call them flip-floppers. I want you to change your mind. As new data comes in, I want you to reassess. So do you think our current systems, whether it's business, law, policing, politics, do we punish failure too much? Is our responses too punitive as opposed to like, oh, that's okay that you didn't know this. It's okay you made this mistake. You're going to be smarter now because now you know not to do this. Are we just too immersed with punitive responses, and that's what disincentivizes people to not be vulnerable?
I think that's an interesting question because on the one hand, yes, I would agree with that. But on the other hand, it depends on how we're framing it, right? So if you have a politician, I guess what I want to say is there is no one answer because
Mm,
each person is different. The situation's different. The issue's different. So if somebody's changing just to get a particular vote, let's say,
hmm.
right? And so they just they don't really know what they believe. Like that, I have a problem with that. If somebody's
Sure.
changing because they certainly have like seen the light or they've come to a different uh, decision or opinion based on research and data or more information or something else has come to light, then that I think is totally justifiable and we should not be punishing them like in the
Hmm.
public opinion. Um, but if you have a politician or a leader in the community or a leader, at my organization who says one thing one year and then 5 years later says exactly the opposite of that one thing with
Hmm.
zero basis, I have a problem with that because then
Sure.
you're not being true. You don't have, there's lack of integrity there. So
Yeah.
I think it comes down to like we have to sort of understand what is the A, what's being said, B, who's the person, and like what are the circumstances around which this change in mindset or whatever is happening. I think all of that
Hmm.
makes, all of that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I do. But it takes a while. Like, how does one recognize they have blind spots? Like, how
Yeah.
do you went to some of the best schools in the world,
Yeah.
right? And you had a blind spot. You were
Yeah.
brilliant from all accounts on paper, but yet it was able, right? Your cognitive, hurdles still impacted you the way it would the kid that, has their GED. Like, how do you
So,
practice? How are you
yeah,
teaching your
I think it's a great question. I think finding our blind spots is one of our biggest challenges.
Mhm.
For me, what I would say is one, obviously engage in the decision-making process, and that'll help you identify any sort of blind spots about more like moral judgment or what you're about to do. One of the blind spots I had was I absolutely thought I could not ask for help or ask questions or be vulnerable. It was just how I believed I had to be. And so I just the ability for all of us, really any of your listeners, to understand that asking for help, being vulnerable, asking for a second opinion is not a sign of weakness. But that's actually how we, and I'll go back to what I was saying in my eye of rise, identify is like asking people who will hold up the mirror and tell you the truth about what you need to hear about yourself or the situation when you don't want to hear it. Like when it feels painful to hear what they're about to say, or it's hard for them to tell you, but they tell you anyways, right? We need those people in our lives, and we need to be able to have those people engaged in our lives. Like operating in a silo, which is what I was doing. I had my own little law practice. I was totally operating in a silo. It was very easy for me to just keep making decisions without seeking out the help around me that was immediately available. I am surrounded by attorneys. My parents are attorneys, my friends are attorneys, my mentors are attorneys, many of them. So I could have gone to any number of people and said, this is what I'm doing, this is what the client wants me to do. Like, but I didn't do that because it was so much easier to just say yes to the guy, operate in my silo, and do what I was doing in a vacuum in my silo, and not ask for help because God forbid I actually don't know what I'm doing. And so
Right.
I think the blind spot is when we think we have all the answers. And so then we don't seek outside support, whether it's by
Hmm.
people or asking questions, and by the way, we should not be relying on ChatGPT only. Like, yeah, go to chat and ask for help, but like chat is oftentimes wrong. And
Sure.
people have situational experiences and life experiences and real actual knowledge about
Hmm.
things that we should be reaching out to. So find mentors in your life. Like I think for me, I had all these mentors, and again, I didn't go to them, but had I gone to them, I'm sure many of them would have suggested and offered me support in different ways. So that's
Hmm.
another way. I think another blind spot, another way to avoid a blind spot is we do get caught up in this race course of life. We do get caught up in pushing, 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 pushing. And we have to, I believe, get to the point where we can actually slow down and pause, or maybe do some meditation or do some self-care around exercise that gives your brain some time to slow down from what you're doing, whatever it is. Like, and believe me, like I still, even in my own business now, running a speaking business and consulting practice, like I still wake up like my mind going, like I have 100 things to do, and I have to remind
Hmm.
myself to like slow down, do my mantras in the morning, meditate, write my gratitude journal, all those things.
Hmm.
So all of that matters. I think all that matters.
You said something that I hear often
Yeah,
with successful people, and they talk about mentors and mentorship. How do you propose, and
yeah,
to the people in the audience that are successful, and people that will hear this that have achieved a certain level, there are young people that I've had to deal with in inner city. They don't even know what the word mentor means. They don't have access to
yeah.
mentors. They're in failing schools. They're in, the parents that are uninvolved, so those kids are not going to have mentors. Those young adults, they're just not present. They don't understand the concept. How can we start to mentor people? Like, how do we reach those that really need it the most?
Oh, it's such a good question. So I'm involved. I sit on the board of an organization here called Overtown Youth Center, which is actually Alonzo Mourning's
Mm.
foundation. And so we serve
Oh yeah.
some of the lowest, poorest neighborhoods
Social, yeah.
and we do provide that kind of support and programming. And there's some mentorship available. I think there are a lot of community organizations like that that I would suggest people try to engage with. I mean, Big Brothers Big Sisters is a great example. I think there's a lot of
Mm.
community um, opportunities because I think the reality is we're not going to be able to touch every single human in
Hmm.
trying to solve this problem, but we can do our best, and every single person matters. And so we can do our best to engage with and find an opportunity to lend a hand and be a mentor and pull someone up who needs that support. And
Hmm.
and it's not financial support necessarily. It's just the guidance and the roadmap on how to, how to avoid going down that wrong path that your police officers
Hmm.
are, arresting them, right? So how do we get people off that path onto the correct path? Maybe it's getting them a book, taking them to
Yeah.
the library, right? Like sometimes it's as small as like like giving the showing that we believe in people and like here, can I take you to the library and get you a book, or can I buy you a book and we can go to the park and read? I mean, obviously you're not going to walk up to a random kid and say that, but whether
Right.
it's if it's through an organization that offers mentorship, available opportunities or, something like that. But I mean, I'm just as much of a culprit of this, right? We get caught up in our own lives and get caught up
Hmm.
in all of our daily tasks and challenges. And so how do we make it an intentional part of how we live our lives is the challenge.
Hmm.
And all I can suggest is that those that are interested find avenues to participate in your communities. I do it by sitting on boards and I spend a lot of time and I raise a lot of money for that, which then, ends up impacting those children's lives.
One thing that I've done years ago when I lived in Chicago, I did it once. It was a Letters to Santa program,
Oh,
and
that's
there
so
were all these
nice. I love
kids,
that.
and I
Yeah.
did this. Oh, I was, it was just probably 30 years ago, and I
Yeah.
got one of these letters, and I remember reading it, and to this day I get emotional. And it said, "All I want for Christmas is a winter coat for my mom because she's got to take the bus to work and she doesn't have one," and it like broke me. And I didn't have much money. I used a credit card and I bought at Marshall Fields in Chicago and I bought this really nice coat. And from that point on, I never met the kid. I never saw them. I have been hooked on this Letters to Santa program. And I try to grab as many
That's so
letters
beautiful.
as I can. And I want
And then you
that
fulfill
to
them.
be, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So beautiful.
I want people to do things like that. But it's so hard, the paradigm shift in society, because I also have this passion for prison. It's I understand there's people that have to be punished, like the bad people, but then there should be some redemption process to reintegrate them into society. You took the chance of being the scarlet letter, the felon, and like, oh no, she's a felon, I don't want to hear anything more about it. But somehow you found redemption, and a lot of it was your own hard work and sacrifice and all things you lost. But somewhere along the line, people also had to embrace you too, and your background probably lend itself to that. You're very charismatic. You have an
Yeah.
incredible
Thanks.
pedigree. Like, of course, so you're going to get accepted. But if someone doesn't have those skills,
You're
but
100%
they
right. I have
have,
a lot of privilege. I recognize the
I
privilege.
don't mean it like that though,
No, but I
but
do. I mean, I had access to a friend who was this amazing attorney, right? And,
mm,
I still paid him, but I like knew who he was, right? He certainly had his
yeah,
door open for me. I am surrounded by family and friends that have been there
who
for me,
care? Yeah.
right? So yes, I certainly have privilege
And
in
how do we
in
get those
how to
people that don't, you know?
yeah, I mean, I feel like there are programs out there for recidivism and returning, reentry into society, like all of those programs, which, I have tried to involve myself here with those organizations, like one of them is
Hmm.
called Leap. But I agree, it's a challenge, and I'm not really sure what's the right answer,
No, that's okay.
except recognizing that it's an issue, and then each of us on our own try to do what we can, to participate in those organizations or donate to those organizations, volunteer something to help
Hmm.
those hire. Actually, where the answer is? Hiring returning citizens.
Mm,
So there's such a black mark on those individuals that are coming out of prison, that have paid their dues to society, that are trying to get a job. And oftentimes, where it shows up? You're trying to an apartment.
right.
You're trying to get a job.
Hmm.
There are so many restrictions for returning citizens, which prevents and makes it that much harder. I live with my parents, right? But I don't own an asset. I started my own business, so I don't have to worry about applying for a job. But if I had
Mm,
to apply for an apartment, I would get rejected because 90% of standardized leases and applications for like all of the developers and all of the like require you to check a box if you've ever been indicted or if you have a felony against you, and that immediately disqualifies you. So we could have a
yeah.
whole conversation around affordable housing and women's housing, or not just women housing, and
Yeah.
the effect that these limitations and these preconceived generalizations and notions of those that are returning from society. Now, I
Hmm.
get it. There are still some bad people. A drug dealer who comes out and then is still dealing drugs. It happens. But
Hmm.
I think the large majority of people that come out of prison truly want to come and do better. But then
Hmm.
society doesn't give you a job, doesn't let you find a place, and the automatic default is, well, I guess I'll just keep doing what I know.
Right. Right.
So how do we break that cycle? Somebody's
Hmm.
got to take a leap of faith and be like, I'm going to hire this person, or I'm going to let this
Hmm.
person stay in my building.
Yeah.
And the whole
It's
like NIMBY, like not in my backyard thing, right? Oh no, I don't want that person living in my housing apartment in a complex because, oh, what if he's gonna, sell drugs? Well, at some point
right.
we need to like recognize it, but for the grace of God, there go I.
I agree. I just, for someone that had this experience, I just wanted to get your take on it. I'm
Yeah.
curious if, I get a great mind on the show. I want to hear if they have solutions.
Yeah.
So, let me, this is just kind of a different question as I'm going to meander through. For
Okay.
your rise process, which one's the hardest one, do you think?
Oh God. I think the hardest one is to surrender. The hardest one is
Mhm.
to, well, honestly, reframe and surrender are the two hardest ones. I mean, even just to start. Okay, so let's just start with reframe.
Okay.
When you're in it, sometimes you can't see any light.
Mm,
You're so like let's say there's a person who has just been diagnosed with cancer. Okay? Knock on wood for me.
mhm.
When you're in it, and I will share with you that I lost a very dear loved one to cancer in 2020. And watching him go through that, it was really hard. And I think what happens is when we're in the moment and something like this happens, it is really freaking difficult to see any good. Okay. But
Mhm.
spiritually, if we can keep rooting ourselves in the positive and like I remember the first thing my mom said to me when I got the grand jury subpoena in 2013, the first thing when I called her is she said, honey, this is your karma. You're supposed to learn something from it. It was literally the first thing she said to me.
Wow.
I didn't even know what that was. Here I am 12 years later, and now I get it. But
Yeah.
so when we're in it, like my mom is just an elevated soul. Like she
Sure.
gets the purpose of life. But like it is hard for most of us when we're going through those moments. So reframing is hard. Surrendering, like when we're finally just learned to let go, we've all just taught ourselves and conditioned ourselves to have this tight wad of control, whether it's control or we're stuck in fear. And ego is one of the things that all of us are trapped in. And
Mm,
so we worry, like, what will people say? What will people think about me? What will people do? Will anybody be my friend? What will happen to my reputation? Will
mhm.
anybody invite me out anymore? Believe me, I felt all of it. I still feel it. I still get up on stage and wonder, like, how is this audience going to respond to me?
Wow.
And there's, by the way, always naysayers still.
Wow.
Whether if it's something I posted and somebody wants to write something negative anonymously behind their, screens, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, there's always going to be naysayers. And so I have just come
Hmm.
to a point of understanding that like whoever is the naysayer, whoever's not ready to accept me and acknowledge that I have grown and evolved, I'm still a really good person, they're not ready to hear my message.
Right.
They have their own journey to go on, and I'm not apparently supposed to be part of it. That's okay.
That's
So yeah,
that's
reframing and surrender to me is the hardest.
You mentioned it a few times, so I'm going to ask because I've heard the come to Jesus moment with
Yeah.
the Jewish
Yeah, yeah,
person and
yeah.
the Hindu person, which I
You
thought
want
was
the
great.
joke?
Well, I just so are you still a when you say
Oh yeah.
spirituality, what is your
Yeah. So I'm very spiritual. When I went through this, I began to listen. So I was raised Hindu. I would say by religion, I consider myself a Hindu. My
Mhm.
parents are practicing. We celebrate all the holidays. Diwali is coming up
Mhm.
in a few weeks. Um, when I was going through this, so I am a full believer that we all have the capacity and ability to believe what we believe. So I believe that no matter what faith you believe in, right? The way I have a metaphor, I say God is like a house. And I apologize first to your listeners, whoever I offend, whoever doesn't agree with me. This is what I believe. If God is like a house, it doesn't matter what door window you take to get into the house, front door, side door, pool
Mhm.
door, garage door, window,
Mhm.
get into the house. If the goal
Hmm.
is to be in the house, whether you see that as heaven, utopia, enlightenment, resurrection, reincarnation, whatever you believe, if the goal is to be
Hmm.
in the house, whatever path you take, whether it's Islam, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, it doesn't matter. You end up in the same place. That's what I believe.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so when I was going through this, I was raised Hindu, but I listened to a Joel Osteen sermon every single day. I read Joyce Meyer and I watched TD Jakes. I read in prison, I read the Bible and I read the Gita. And I actually say that like I probably know more Bible stories than most Christians because I listened to hundreds of sermons when I went through this. And
Wow.
so I just see it all as like enlightening stories and moments and ways of understanding God and God's power or the universe's power, whatever it is that you believe, that's what I believe. Like I just think that there's a lot of growth that we can do by having this, power. Sorry,
Hmm.
sorry, I know there's a lot of commotion outside.
No, no, it's fine.
You can't hear any of it. Okay. There's some
I
people
just, yeah,
walking.
no worries. So when it comes, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love your analogy about the house. Uh, how did what was your process with getting and earning your trust and earning the trust of others and your credibility and then their trust in you with people who weren't as kind maybe or didn't know you know your soul that you just were a good person who made a bad decision. What did
Yeah.
that look like to you earning that back and how hard did you push to earn that back?
I would say I'm not pushing.
Okay.
Because I have forgiven myself, I stand very strong in what I believe and what I know I can offer to others and to be in service and give value and add value to others.
Hmm.
So I would say that I don't try to convince anybody to meet with me, to talk to me, to listen to me. If somebody is open, I mean, I clearly market and do selling. I mean, I sell my service, quotes, sell my services. But
Hmm.
if somebody is not open and they're not going to listen, there's nothing I can do to convince them, right? They'll just
Hmm.
have to come to it on their own. And once they're ready, when my book hits big and there's a docuseries and then there's a movie on me, people will come knocking, right?
Sure.
That's what's going to happen.
Sure. Sure. If there is a movie and you sell your life rights, this definitely has to be in the movie. I absolutely. This
I,
podcast.
th I believe that will be happening at some point.
I
I mean,
love it.
I don't know who it is. There is a
Yeah.
docuseries that's under works right now on my story. And in fact, while we were talking, the producer just texted me. So like we're now friends and he's in the process of putting together a sizzle. So he will sell that. And then his goal is definitely to sell my life rights. We have some big goals on who we want to buy it.
Yeah.
I have faith.
It would it would be great. You could play yourself and you could expand the resume
Not
a
sure I
little
want to do
bit.
that. I think there are lots of other better Indian actresses that could do that.
So what would you so let me ask you, if you had 5 minutes, like you could just shoot back, would you change this? Like if you could go back in time, would you say, don't do it, trust me? Or would you say, would you not? Would you just let it go? And because the trajectory, even though you lost so much,
Yeah.
is this a net positive for you?
Well, it is a net positive for me, but it hurt my kids a lot and my parents, and I lost.
Yeah.
I'm still a decade later struggling financially because for 3 years when I was doing this, judge wouldn't let me make money, and it's been hard. And then along the way, my sister passed away, and then COVID
So
hit. So
sorry.
like, there's just been a lot of ups and downs in this career in this business for me. I will say that like I'm on the momentum. Like now I know it's picking up for me, and I will be fine by next year. But I will say that
Yeah.
like if I could go back, people always say like, what are your inflection points? If I could go back, I would make better decisions and not work with this developer and not contribute to
Mhm.
the crisis. However, I would not take away the prison experience. I would not take away that pain that I
Wow.
went through, which really was a reckoning for me and
Hmm.
forced me to grow in a way that I never would have grown had I just continued to be a lawyer and practicing a
Yeah.
normal way of life. So, and I used to define myself by achievement and grades and money. And now I define myself by how many people can I inspire and touch today? So my entire purpose and mission and my why is directly connected to this experience. And so it's like God or the universe, whatever you believe, has pushed me to find my mission in life by going through this very painful moment to
Hmm.
find over here that light. that I didn't know existed.
Yeah. How do we strengthen this ethical compass? Like how do you work on that?
Writing in your gratitude journal, daily prayer, surrounding yourself with people that will lift you and guide you and tell you what you need to know. Reading the proper books, like reading books that are constantly like reminding us of whether it's a memoir, so it's a good story that you're learning. My book is coming out, by the way, guys, so my book will be out in the spring. Um,
We'll definitely
I think
talk
I
about
think
that.
reading and learning from other cautionary tales is a really good way for us to learn and grow
Hmm.
and recognize. So when the moment hits us, we're ready. Um,
Hmm.
Honestly, I think that's why a lot of people hire me, so that then when the 1,000 people in the audience hear my story, they're like, 6 years down the road when something happens, they're like, oh, I remember Rashmi's story. And by the way, that has
Hmm.
happened. Like I've been speaking now since 2016, and like I've had in the last few years, people email me and say, I heard you in 2018. And because I
Mm.
remembered your story today, I almost did something and I decided not to. So that happens and it's pretty powerful.
Super powerful. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
almost priceless. That's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you literally affected the trajectory of a human
Yeah.
being's life. How do you quantify that? Right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. How important is it for law enforcement, for my law enforcement audience, how important is it for them to get out of their silo and to, as Jonathan Haidt would say, draw a bigger circle, bring other people into your silo, thus breaking the silo? Like, what's the value to them to get to know people who, maybe have a criminal past?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily has to be those with a criminal past, but I do think that breaking out of your silo is vital. I think those
Mhm.
of us that are operating in a silo, there's so many things, right? There's a lack of checks and balances. There's a lack of a better, diverse understanding of how what I'm doing is impacting and affecting others that I may or may not even know I'm impacting.
Mhm.
There's a lack of a diverse perspective. So, what I'm about to do, wait, maybe there's a different way of looking at this situation, and I need to surround myself with other people. And if I'm in a silo, I don't have the opportunity to learn from others. Um, yeah, I mean, so those are like three ideas, I think, for like why and I was in a silo, so I get it. It's so easy to get trapped in your silo. And like the thing is when you're in a silo, you're like the decision maker and you're the boss, and you can kind of just do what you want. There's a lot of pride and arrogance stuck in there and ego.
Mhm.
And so when we can convince ourselves that we are better off not in our silo and just starting to figure out what that looks like and building connection and community around the silo, and so that we break it
Mhm.
down, that's where the power is, I think.
When you had to do your time, I guess if the term incarcerated, and you had those moments when you were just alone and you were just stuck in your thoughts,
Mhm.
what did you learn about yourself that you didn't know?
I mean, that's really where I began to break down those glass walls. That's really where I began to understand that I was always so worried about what people thought.
Mm-hmm.
I always believed that people loved me for getting the grades and making the money and getting the good job. And I never really loved being a lawyer, honestly. And I had to acknowledge that. I think I became a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer. I know I became a lawyer to make my parents proud of me. And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
in community, you become a doctor or a lawyer or engineer. And, nowadays also you can be a tech guy or a girl. But I don't really think it made me happy.
Yeah.
So I learned that about myself. Um, so in my quietest of moments, the peace that I found in prison without a phone, honestly, without
Yeah.
obligations of having to go anywhere, do anything, and just be was probably the first time, like since I was a kid, that I allowed myself that peace of mind. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so that reminder to me, by the way, I need to remind that. I need to remind myself of that still every day. Because you come back and you get caught up in like, all my deadlines for clients and all the things that I'm doing, which feel very honored and blessed for. But I think we all could learn from taking that like silent, period of time, however long that is on a daily basis or weekly basis, where we just allow ourselves to disconnect. And it could be a walk, it could be a prayer, it could be a stroll on the beach or in getting in the water or whatever it is that we find, doing a yoga class. Like, I think there's a lot of ways that we can learn to disengage. And that was probably the biggest power of being away. It was like a forced
Mm,
time out of my life. And it was
yeah.
actually such a blessing because it gave me a lot. I mean, I read a ton. I still read a ton, but I read a lot. I prayed a lot. I worked out a lot, all of which I still do. But it was very different when you're doing it with like all the time in the world.
Restraints.
I mean, I had a job.
Yeah.
I did have a job in prison, but like my job
Mm,
in prison took up a certain amount of time. I still had lots of extra hours in the day. So,
yeah. Let me ask you, just because you mentioned this, how has fitness helped you at this point,
yeah,
like during this phase?
I've always been a little bit of a fitness addict. Actually, in college, I was anorexic, so I've gone through lots of body image
Mm,
issues. When I was a kid, I was
mm,
very overweight. Um, so when I was in prison, I worked out a lot. I was a marathoner before that, so I would run marathons, and so I was always a pretty avid runner. And in prison, actually, I was running so much that on this like makeshift track that they had at the camp, that one of the guards, like 3 weeks in, like I heard a on the intercom after 4:30 count, I heard inmate Aaron Pace, come to rec. So I go to recreation, and the guard says, "Are you that Indian girl that just runs all the time?" I
mm,
go, "Yeah." She goes, "Okay, you're going to teach a class on weight loss." And I was like, "What?" So I then taught 180 women that signed up for this class. And 3 times a week, I would lead them in a boot camp. Like,
mm,
yes, like make workouts. I'm not a trained fitness instructor, but I was leading them in a boot camp. I took their measurements. I weighed them. I took their fat like measurements, and I kept track of it, and I taught them about nutrition. So most of them did not know the difference between a fat, a carb, and a protein. I taught
mm,
them that. So it was actually very interesting. But fitness has always been how I relieve stress. It's how I start every single day. I don't
mhm,
care how little sleep I've gotten. I don't care what city I'm in. I don't care where I'm at. I either use the hotel gym, or
mhm,
I find a local gym, or I go for a walk or a hike. But it does not matter what day you're talking to me, I will have already worked out. That's just how I start every day. The only difference is if I have like a 4 a.m. flight, then I get to my location and then I work out. But I will work out every single day. It's just a
mhm,
daily commitment. And for me, it is how I clear my head. It's my stress release. Yes, I want to continue to look good and be fit. I think it will affect my mental health. It affects my longevity.
mhm.
I want to be alive
Yeah.
very many more decades with my children. So
Yeah. That's good. I was curious with that. Thank you so much.
yeah,
I also want to be aware and cognizant of your time. So tell us a little bit about where we can find you. Tell us about
yeah,
the book that's coming out. Just kind of go out there, all about you right now.
yeah. So okay, well, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm sure you have my name here somewhere, but my name is my website. So it's www.rashmiairan.com. I actually just recently launched brand new graphics and design. I'm super excited. Um, so that's my website. It's also how you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. I think YouTube
Hmm.
is actually Rashmi Aaron Speaker. Um, Oh, and I am now on TikTok because my kids told me I need to be on TikTok because I'm about to like, market this book. So my book is titled
Yeah.
All Rise. We're still working on the tagline. The current tagline is A Lawyer's Journey from Prison to Purpose. But we're going to add a
Mm,
little tweak in there because it's not just a memoir, it's really a business prescriptive memoir. So it's a memoir, but leadership lessons weaved throughout the book. So it's really like a leadership
mhm,
tweak to my memoir. There's some reflection questions. There'll be a workbook that comes out with that. Eventually, that'll come out in the spring, either April or May 2026. So I'm excited about that. I have some kind of big names that are endorsing it, so I'm excited about that. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. My email is rushme@rushmeaaron.com. So feel free to email me. I basically, I would say that most of my work revolves around keynote speaking, and
mhm,
workshopping around the idea of resilience, change management, leadership, sales, growth. I do a lot of leadership retreats and women's summits and,
mm.
a lot of those
That's
things.
great. That's incredible. Your journey is fascinating. I can't
Thank
wait for
you.
your book.
Thank you.
I'm definitely gonna grab it. All right. So as we sort of wrap up here, any
Mhm.
words that you like to say? Maybe you have your own personal message or just things you
Yeah.
like to get out there into the sphere. Please share it.
I mean, I always come back to what my mission is, which is to help all of us understand that we are not alone in our struggle. Every one of us will struggle with some level of an event, an unfortunate circumstance, uncertainty, fear, and we are all surrounded by it right now in our lives. And so it's not if, it's when, right? Because the universal truth is we will all go through it. So when we go through these moments, to know that we're not alone and that we have the power. Because what I know is that 100% of your audience, every single one of you listening, will be able to rise to it. You can rise to it. And the process is, as we talked about, rise. Reframe, identify, surrender, and evolve. By the way, you can go to my website. It's on there. Reach out to me. I'm happy to send you a toolkit that I've created to dive deeper on this. But it's really the idea that no matter what we're going through, if we can remind ourselves that I have the power, I have the ability and capacity to come through these really hard moments. And what I know is on the other side of it, there's something waiting for me that's better and magical and lighter than I ever can imagine. And when you can root in that belief, then every single day we know we can keep going. We can keep pushing hard, or not pushing hard. We can keep evolving better and growing and becoming better versions of ourselves, which is, I think, the human existence. That's why we're all here. And we keep adding and creating our legacy.
I love it. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Rashmi Aaron. Thank you so much for being on
You.
the podcast. It was just a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed Rashmi's story as much as I did. Her journey is a reminder that integrity isn't about falling, it's about how we rise. For the listeners, I encourage you to check out Rashmi's work. Again, that's rashmiaaron.com. There's an old Japanese proverb: fall 7 times, rise 8. You can hear the echoes of that ancient advice in Rashmi's own philosophy. Rashmi says we are not defined by our worst mistake, but rather how we rise after it. Redemption is always possible, so long as you own the truth. We'll see you next time.